It's been a little over 6 months since I started working full-time at Microsoft as a technical program manager after I graduated back in June 2020. So I thought it could be useful to sort of reflect back on tech burnout and whether I've experienced it or not. So first, I think it's sort of important to define actually what burnout is in terms of the tech industry or just sort of work in general. So according to Mayo Clinic, job burnout is a special type of work-related stress, a state of physical or emotional exhaustion that also involves a sense of reduced accomplishment and a loss of personal identity. Some symptoms of burnout can also include becoming more cynical at work, being more irritable with coworkers, lacking energy to be productive, harder to concentrate, and a lot of other things too. And burnout in the tech industry is actually really common. I was actually looking and there was a study that was sort of conducted, I think on Blind, like that Team Blind app with about 4,000 participants. Now, it's not like a perfect representation of the tech industry, but I think it had some sort of interesting conclusions. So out of the 4,000 respondents, about 61% of them said they felt that they had experienced some sort of burnout or were burnt out. And 61% is actually pretty high for anything. And I feel like a lot of college students can sort of resonate with that like short-term burnout. So, whenever you take like a midterm or like a final exam, your brain is just like melted completely after. Like, I felt that many times throughout my undergraduate education, specifically on math tests. But it's like when you just finish studying or you just finish the exam and you're just like exhausted, like your brain is just mush. You're just like, I just want to do nothing. I want to turn my brain off. So like play video games or watch Netflix or whatever, because you're just like exhausted from that experience, that traumatic test taking experience. So I think a lot of college students can resonate at least with that sort of one-off burnout feeling. But I think it becomes a problem once that burnout feeling, that once-off burnout feeling becomes a 7-day-a-week feeling where you're just like, you wake up and you're still exhausted, even if you're watching TV, you're still exhausted. Even if you don't have homework, you're still exhausted. And I think at that point, once it becomes a recurring problem or a recurring situation, then it's actually a problem. And even with my interview with my friend Bryce, who's an Apple engineering project manager, he even talked about how he experienced burnout within his first year at Apple. You've had a couple different experiences at Viasat, at Microsoft, at Apple, and burnout in the tech space is very big, especially for people coming right out of college. They typically hit the ground sprinting and then die really quickly. So have you ever felt burnout?
I think you said it right when college students really exit the gate and are just going full speed. Like, I'm 20 something years old. Like I'm ready to spend 20 hours like every day at
Exactly.
work. Like, I'm going to skip sleep and that kind of stuff. Like I think my first experiences with burnout were in college. And I don't think that's unusual for a lot of people. UCSD really pushed its students hard. And so like working jobs and trying to maintain any kind of academic standing is really tough. And so I kind of finished college and I was like, ooh, okay, like that was rough. I stumbled through my last year. And then I took a few months off before I started work. And I think just recently I finally hit that point where it's like I've passed my 1 year mark and I'm already like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Like I went through this whole year at work. I wanted to prove myself. I was spending 10 to 12 hours a day at work. And you get to a point where you're waking up and you're exhausted. Like it doesn't matter if you sleep 10 hours or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you're keeping your diet, you're working out, like you're still just tired all the time.
It could just be like mental exhaustion, just like the constant,
waking up and you're like, oh God, okay, I see all the things I need to do, but I feel like I don't have energy. And so you can become a little lethargic when you're burnt out. You're like, okay, I guess I'll check my email, and okay, I guess I'll like go to this meeting and take notes. And it's tough. And I experienced that.
So I think it's definitely important to talk about because in the tech industry, burnout is common and it's a problem, and people get exhausted both physically and mentally. And with work from home being more and more common, that could definitely perpetuate the symptoms and the problems that come with burnout. Now, for my personal reflection, have I experienced burnout? Is your boy Michael burnt out? Now, the short answer I would say is no, I'm not actually burnt out. But the longer answer is sometimes. So I've definitely experienced those sort of one-off burnout days. I mentioned when you take a test, when you take a final exam, something like that in college that I could sort of akin it to. I've definitely felt those before, where I'm just sort of exhausted at the end of a particularly hard day, and maybe in that circumstance, in that scenario, I do feel burnt out, but by the next morning, after I get some good rest, I no longer feel that way. And again, I would akin it to sort of like finishing a big programming assignment in college. If you're a computer science major, you just submitted it and you're like, my brain is tired. So I've definitely felt that before, and that usually happens after like a particularly long coding session where I'm trying to add a specific functionality or I'm trying to fix a bug. So, I'll be coding and it'll be like 10 a.m. and then I'll look and it'll be 3 p.m. It's just like, whoa, where did those 5 hours go? And at that point, I'm like, okay, like I need to get up for a second. I need to stretch. I need to, get a snack or something like that, because my brain was just on overdrive for like 5 hours straight. And at the end of those days, I'm particularly more tired, but as long as I get enough sleep, usually by the next day, I'm feeling okay. So in those sort of compartmentalized situations, I have felt burnout, but it's never been sort of a recurring feeling. So like I mentioned, as long as I get enough sleep, and as long as I sort of limit my work days, I try to limit them between 8 to 9 hours, because, working from home, it's very easy to work way longer or start earlier, or whatever it may be. Maybe you're like eating dinner and you get a work email and then you kind of hop on, you update some PowerPoint decks, or you're re-looking the architecture, prepping for a presentation. So I think it's important to limit how much actual work time you're doing. So I think having a block of time where you're like, this is work, this is what we're doing. It's like I'm in the office. That's what I try to do, where I usually start work at 8 and finish at 5. So between those times, I'm like, okay, I am at work right now. This block of time is dedicated for work, rather than sort of like interspersing my personal time with work time, which I think at those points it can be a little bit iffy. But I also think Microsoft is just known for a better work-life balance compared to some other tech companies. And there's very much encouragement to just take time and rest up. And I've seen that with my team and my manager. They're all very accepting of like, hey, we've worked really hard this past sprint, these past 3 sprints, whatever it may be. Like, I'm just tired. I'm gonna take, some leave time or whatever. And also, like, the last Friday, I think, of every month, Microsoft sets it as sort of a day of learning. So it's very, very much encouraged that you don't do work related to the product you're working on, and you rather focus on learning a new technology or a new area of interest, whatever it may be. So I think that really helps with sort of revitalizing, particular teams, or if you're feeling a little bit burnt out, where it's like the end of the month, it's a Friday, you're like, okay, instead of coding for 8 hours in C#, I'm gonna focus on reading more about machine learning, or I'm gonna read more about React, or instead of updating PowerPoints, I'm gonna focus on, flushing out our agile processes, whatever it may be. And I think that's really awesome. But another really big field, at least not big field, another sort of area of burnout that I've seen in posts about burnout is like coworker competition. So at Microsoft, I've never really felt any toxic sort of competition with any sort of coworker on my team. But I have heard that at other tech companies, coworker or like intra or inter, I don't remember which is the right word there, competition within the company can be a really big problem, because when you're competing with your coworker, maybe some level of competition is okay, but when it's like, okay, I'm gonna stay 10 hours, and then your coworker is like, I'm gonna stay 11 hours, and then you're like, well, I'm gonna stay 12 hours. And at that point, you're just running out the clock, and you're definitely just gonna get burnt out going through that. So I feel like at this point, 6 or 7 months in, I'm in a pretty good spot. I could sort of think of it or explain it as like, if you're running a 5K, maybe you're like a mile in, and you're like running, you're like at a good pace, you're thinking, you listen to some good music, and you're like, oh, this is good, I can keep this up. you're not like too tired where you're like, I can't make it the next mile, but you're also not chilling where you're like, I'm going pretty fast, but this is a good pace, like my body can keep up with it. So as a new grad, I think it can be particularly daunting, or you might be fearful that when you join a big tech company, you might be expected to work 12-hour days on weekends and stuff like that, and maybe you will, depending on the company, I guess. But I think me reflecting on this can hopefully give you some mind and ease. Maybe if you're coming to work at Microsoft, I think they have a very good work-life balance. So even as a new grad, I think this has been good so far. I've been working home pretty much the entire time since I joined Microsoft in August of 2020 after graduating in June 2020 from UCSD. So I've been working home for this entire time. And whether work from home is like a good or a bad thing, I think is up for debate. Maybe I'll make another video on it. There's some benefits and some downsides, so whether I would be more burnt out going into the office or maybe I'm more burnt out staying at home, don't really know because I don't have that comparison right now. But I don't really feel that burnt out, at least working from home right now. You don't really have to commute anywhere. I can kind of just roll out of bed with my laptop, start, running some tests, trying to fix some bugs that I encountered the other day. And in that sense, it's a lot chiller. I don't really have to worry about, getting all nice, dressed up, putting on the turtleneck and whatnot to go to work and, catch the bus or whatever, and kind of just focus on work. But again, on the other side of that coin, you could be like, there's no sort of real end to the workday unless you hard specify this is the end of the workday, which I try to do. So whenever I start work, I basically add 8 or 9 hours to that and be like, okay, by this time on this day, it's over. Whether I fix the bug or not, I have to end the day. Otherwise, I'm just gonna sit here all the time until I figure it out. Luckily, I usually finish whatever I'm working on before that, so it's never really hard to be like, okay, I'm done now. That was a good day at work. But I think setting that hard limit in your workday is pretty important so that you don't feel burnout when you're working from home. And I hope that helps as a sort of tip for any new grads that are joining companies right now. Now, there are some other ways to fight burnout. So I think one major thing is to actually take time off. Like, the time off is there, whether that's take a sick day for your mental health. You're not really supposed to plan for sick days, or you could, plan for an extended period of vacation. So I think actually utilizing those days, specifically when you're feeling burnt out, maybe one day you just get up and you're feeling like you got a headache, you're feeling tired, you're feeling exhausted, maybe just message your team and be like, you know what, I'm taking a sick day today, I'm taking a mental health day today, because honestly, I just need this rest to be productive. And that means fully unplug, so don't check your work email, don't check Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever IM Messenger, just do a hobby that you like. Also, I think being open with your manager is really, really important so that they know sort of what you're going through. And usually most managers, they're probably a manager for a reason, so hopefully they're nice and accommodating. They'll accommodate you for whatever you're feeling. If you're constantly feeling burnt out, they know you're not going to be putting up your best performance, or you're not going to be writing the best code. So it's even in their own interests to encourage you to take time off or, take some less work. So maybe if you bring it up to your manager and you're like, hey, I've been feeling burnt out, maybe they're like, okay, maybe take this Friday as a mental health day, enjoy the 3-day weekend, whatever it may be, or maybe, for the next 2 sprints or whatever, maybe cut down on the amount of story points or the amount of backlog items that you're taking on, and just focus on revitalizing your productivity, and then you can really hit the ground running once you sort of feel a little bit more energized. I also think exercising, eating healthy, and getting enough sleep, like I mentioned, is vitally important to not feeling burnt out or helping you overcome burnout. So when you're just generally healthier, I've noticed I just feel more productive. I can sit for longer periods of time in front of the computer if I ran the previous day, or if I ran in the morning, or if I worked out previously, or if I'm eating really healthy. I just feel a lot more content. I feel a lot happier, a lot healthier. So if you're experiencing burnout, maybe try to make potential lifestyle change. So I hope this video could be useful to any new grads or college students or people already working in the tech industry about burnout, about fear of being in burnout, experiencing symptoms of burnout, and potentially finding ways to overcome that or resolve those issues. Just remember that it's really, really common to experience it, so it's likely that at some point you will experience it. So just knowing some strategies to overcome it, knowing when time to take off, knowing if you need to make some sort of lifestyle change, if you need to limit your work, if you need to be more open with your manager, hopefully I could open your eyes a little bit like that. And if you're graduating or you're gonna be graduating soon and you're thinking about working at a big tech company, and you're a little bit worried about whether or not it's for you, whether or not you're gonna have a good work-life balance. Now, it very much depends on the company, but hopefully my experiences can be a little bit useful to you. And if you actually want to know what I do in a regular day, I made a video a couple months ago about like a day in the life of a program manager at Microsoft. So hopefully if you could watch that and maybe get a little bit more of a sense of what it's like just to work from home at a big tech company. So definitely check that out. Also, if you want a more longer format video, definitely check out the interview I did with my friend Bryce, who's an Apple engineering project manager. He's been working there for I think a little over a year. He gives some really good tips about burnout, imposter syndrome, as well as applications, how to stand out in interviews, all good things like that, and just generally how to get into the program manager, product manager, project manager workspace. My name is Michael. I make college advice, tech, computer science videos. If any of that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing to the channel, leave a like on this video to help your boy out with the YouTube algorithm, leave a comment down below for any suggestions of future videos you might want to see or that could be useful. You can always combat British accents from your boy over here. Check out one of my past videos and my past self would thank you dearly. Check out one of my future videos and my future self would also thank you dearly. That's all from me. Hopefully I'll see you in a future one. Bye bye.